All right. Oyez, oyez, oyez. Come forward and ye shall be heard. God praise this court, or whatever it says after that. I don't know. Why are we entering with that? Because it's Common Sense Ohio, August 23rd, 2024. And the voting decision comes out of the U.S. Supreme Court. This is out of the challenging the Arizona law. We'll get to that in a second, but a few introductory remarks as usual. We are looking for common sense, and we are finding it right here at the round table, except today without Brett. Homesick.
To paraphrase Kamala Harris from last night, it's Steve Palmer and Norm Murdoch appearing for the people.
For the people.
For God's sake.
All right. Well, anyway, so there's lots going on, so we're gonna buzz through some of this introductory stuff. But CommonSenseOhioShow.com is there. It is our website. It is where you can use that as sort of your launching off place to get to know us, to get to know the show, to like, subscribe, share, do all the things that we would request of you. Why would we request it? Because this takes work. Look at this stuff Norm's got over here. He's got piles of paper. He's like a paper chase. And every week he's got notes, and I don't understand it, but he does it. And it takes a lot of time. And it does take time for everybody here to make this happen. We hope you're enjoying the show, as they say. And if you want to become a sponsor, if you want to donate, if you want to do anything, go to CommonSenseOhioShow.com, send us a note. And beyond that, if you want to send us a topic that we will kick around here at the round table, we will do that too. We get comments periodically. Norm, I know you're prolific online, responding on Facebook, etc. So anyway, we do appreciate your support. I have always, or not always, but for the last year or so, I have been churning up old World War II history comments, or what happened today in World War II history. Believe it or not, I stole this from the Columbus Dispatch years ago. They used to do this back in the 80s and 90s, like 50 years ago today in history. And I always started my Dispatch read with that. I would skip to that.
And it is amazing, whatever conflict you're talking about, like First World War, the Civil War, World War II, those conflicts, I mean, they resonate right up to the present.
Yeah. Oh, they do.
In
right?
almost every case.
Well, particularly the First and Second World Wars. I mean, that's still modern history. We're still living that history.
And Civil War. We're still sorting out race relations.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable, right?
Anyway, today's a good day to discuss about what happens when two evil criminals make an agreement.
Yeah.
It's sort of like drug dealers agreeing not to attack each other, or like rival gangs saying we're not going to attack each other.
Literally the axis of evil.
Literally. I mean, the most evil people that ever walked the earth, ironically, there's still people championing the economic structure of both, and they're all on the left, by the way. But anyway, Hitler and Stalin entered in on August 23rd, 1939, an agreement not to attack each other and sort of divide up Europe with their, quote, spheres of influence in the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, which basically cut up Europe, Eastern Europe. The Soviet Union would occupy Eastern Poland, the Baltic states, and part of Finland, while Germany would invade Poland. The pact also included a secret protocol that added Lithuania to the Soviet Union's sphere of interest. And, Hitler promptly broke the agreement.
Well, yeah, he broke the agreement.
Not promptly, but shortly.
When he started Barbarossa later. But
it wasn't like Stalin wasn't ready for that either, though.
But they, I mean, people forget this. And, the history of the Soviet Union in World War II is pretty complex. German, the Treaty of Versailles, for example, banned the reinstatement of the Luftwaffe, so the German Air Force. So under the Hitler administration, pilots were sent to the Soviet Union for training, for combat training. I mean, those two countries were working together, even as Hitler and Mein Kampf was condemning the Soviet Union and the Slavic people as subhuman. But yet he and Stalin cooperated on things like violating the Treaty of Versailles, said the German Luftwaffe could be, rebuilt. And the Ribbentrop Treaty that you just talked about, Steve, it specifically set up the more than spheres of influence, but it set up the bifurcation of Poland. Down to what river was the border between Eastern Poland and Western Poland, where the Germans took Western Poland and the Soviet Union took Eastern Poland. So,
and if you read the history of what they did in Poland, I mean, it's like brutal.
Well, yeah,
Both sides. I mean, it's brutal.
The Katyn massacre,
Katyn Forest.
What was that? Something like 16,000 Polish intellectuals and military officers
executed.
The
the Soviets did this.
The Cream, and they blamed it on the Germans, and then later excavations proved it was the Soviets. But they disemboweled the Polish society from rebuilding itself by getting rid of the intelligentsia, the cream of Polish society.
So this is a natural progression. Look, not to make it so too dramatic, but I guess we should also say we're not going to go into Stalingrad because we have, but that started in August 23rd, ironically, August 23rd, 1942. Anyway, it's interesting what you have to do when you're trying to push an ideology that is contrary to natural human instinct.
Yes, right.
You have to kill everybody and exterminate everybody who doesn't agree. And what's most remarkable is you come up with a way, these ideologies come up with a way to justify it, like for the good of the whole. Yeah. And that's what Stalin did, and Hitler too.
Yes.
If you don't agree, it's because then we have to just get rid of you.
Right.
And this is why like millions and millions and millions of people have died under this communist notion. And we're seeing hints of it too. You're seeing in a different way. I'm not saying that the leftists today are murdering people yet. But you're seeing it in the tamping down of free speech and saying, well, this isn't free speech or this isn't speech, it's hate speech.
Yes.
Where they redefine what it is. And really at its core, and this we can jump into maybe some of the DNC, the lies. But, it's like you have to tamp down what they're calling free or hate speech and racism and whatever else they label it as. But really what they're doing is tamping down views that disagree with them. They're tamping down contrary views. They don't want a discussion about it. They don't want anybody to challenge it. And, the extreme of that is Katyn Forest massacre. And because Stalin had to get rid of the intellectuals who disagreed.
Yeah.
Because that was opposition that he could not win in the form of ideas. He had to do it in the form of massacre.
And of course, the pretext for World War II, the entire reason France and England declared war on Germany is because Hitler invaded Poland, and there was a treaty whereby they guaranteed the security of Poland. So that pulled them into the war. So England and France decided to fight Hitler because he invaded Poland, and Poland therefore would be subjugated and would be a state under the thumb of a dictator. And ironically enough, right, at the end of World War II, what did England and France and frankly the United States agree to? That Joseph Stalin could be the replacement dictator of Poland. So the entire pretext for entering into combat was totally thrown out the window at Yalta, and it's just like, go ahead, you can have Poland. I mean, we were in the theater because of Poland, and we abandoned the Polish people. It's a disgrace on Western, military history that the very reason the conflict was started, in the final analysis, the USSR won World War II. I mean, we got rid of Hitler, but then the USSR took over half of Europe.
Yeah.
And we were just like, we didn't listen to people like General Patton because he's extreme. He slapped a soldier. So,
or even Churchill.
And we just, we bailed. The British people did not reelect Winston Churchill towards the end of the war.
Well, look, there's still another side of that. I mean, we were a little bit weary of war.
Right.
And taking on the Red Army at that point was certainly not in anybody's, I don't want to say their best interest, but it was certainly nothing anybody wanted to even comprehend, let alone go actually do. But I've told this story before, is that when the Germans were retreating from Berlin, heading west, they ran at all the American soldiers, and they were sort of shocked, like, hey, come on with us.
Yeah.
Let's go fight Stalin.
Right.
That's the real enemy.
Yeah.
And it sort of shows that there was ideologically at the top with fascism, there was obviously we were fighting Hitler for all sorts of reasons, But at the bottom, the soldiers, the German soldiers, were not all that unlike the American soldiers. They were just people on the ground fighting a war that they didn't start. And certainly the SS and some of those troops were more ideologues than others. But
right.
a lot of them were just soldiers. And they were like, look, the real enemy are these bastards coming our way.
Yeah.
Let's go take that on.
Yeah.
And they knew. They were just it just so happened Hitler needed to be crushed, right? So that had to happen first. But anyway,
I think Truman was counting on buffaloing Stalin because we had the atomic weapon and it had been used on Japan. And I think Truman was gambling that Stalin wouldn't be so dumb as to dominate Eastern Europe in view of the fact that we had atomic weapons and he did not at that time. And it didn't work.
Yeah.
He was not intimidated whatsoever.
Well, it's because Stalin, like the push where there's mush is sort of the saying, and Stalin understood that that there was mush there. We didn't. He knew that we didn't have the stomach.
That's right.
To go do anything real. So he pushed, and he took over half of Europe.
Yeah, including half of Germany.
When there was a wall there until what, 92, 91?
Yeah.
And even the Polish solidarity movement and all of what was it, Lech Wałęsa, all that crap that happened back.
John Paul II, the Pope, going there and doing masses, while it was still under the direct rule of General Jaruzelski, who was the puppet in charge of Poland for the Soviet Union.
Yep. No, it's crazy stuff. But the point of that is that ideology. What's interesting is that Marx sort of envisioned this idea that the people would rise up, the working man would rise up and sort of take over and marshal in this utopian communist nonsense that they talk about. And he thought that would happen, of course, first in places like the United States of America and England, where we had more capitalistic economies. And not only did it not happen, it's like in these economic structures, the working class can advance faster and up higher than any other type of economic system that has ever been employed in history.
Sure.
So it didn't happen they forced it. Stalin has to force it, and they do that at the end of the gun.
Yeah. With all his price fixing.
Right. So let's talk about that. I mean, boy, or do we want to talk Supreme Court? Or let's do the Supreme Court first because,
Yeah, go ahead. You did a little research into this Arizona voter ID, proof of citizenship, where the Arizona law was being, on temporary hold, waiting for the Supreme Court to weigh in.
Yeah, so I think it's important always to start with the procedure and what's going on. And this decision, we can talk about what it does and what it does not do. First of all, it's a Republican National Committee et al., meaning and others, versus Mi Familia Vota et al., and others. So there's multiple plaintiffs and there's multiple defendants. I think a lot of the AGs around the country joined this. But it was an Arizona law that basically was a voter ID law that says you have to have ID to register to vote. You have to have ID to register, and you have to have ID to vote in person and by mail. And probably there was some other provision, but so this sort of matriculates up after the law is passed. And what happens is when the law was challenged in the Arizona courts, it immediately probably went to the federal courts, and then the federal courts have to decide. All right, we're going to determine whether this law is constitutional, meaning you have a state law, and then you have to test the state law against the United States Constitution. So this is the supremacy clause. This is like states can do whatever they want until it runs afoul of what the U.S. Constitution says. And so state courts are able; they have the jurisdiction and authority to make those decisions. But eventually, if it keeps seesawing back and forth, no matter what the state court says, yay or nay, unconstitutional, it gets up to the federal courts. Or you can start the action in federal court if you want to. And the federal court first has to decide, they have to decide, is the law constitutional? But then often that goes along with this is the question about what do we do with this law while we're deciding if it's constitutional or not. And by that, I mean, are we going to let the law go into enactment? Are we going to let the law enforce what it's trying to do? Or are we going to say, no, we're not going to declare it unconstitutional yet, but you're not allowed to enforce it yet either. And that's what this decision is all about. It's a procedural question. And the procedure matters because this is already being overstated as a decision on the merits that they allow this but not allow that. And I guess to some extent it's a decision on the merits in that the U.S. Supreme Court permitted enforcement of some of the law. Not all of it, but some of it. But it's not a decision on the merits because they actually talk about it in their one-paragraph decision on this that says, look, this is, we're only saying that you can enforce this part of the law unless and until we ever grant cert or don't grant cert to actually review a thing on the merits. If we don't grant cert, then it's dead in the water. This order is over. So what happens is the district court, the lower federal court, enjoins the law. They said, look, we're not going to let you enforce this law while this judge is deciding whether it's constitutional or not. So the litigants, the Republican National Committee, asks the Supreme Court to review that little narrow part of the decision where the lower court has decided not to allow the state to enforce the law. The Supreme Court takes it only on that issue. Are we going to let this law remain intact while we decide whether it's constitutional? And in a split decision, 5 to 4?
Yeah.
In a 5-4 decision, the Supreme Court says, look, we're going to allow some of this law, the little part of it that requires ID to register, to go into enforcement, but the rest of it we're not. So mail-in ballots don't require ID and whatever other provisions there are.
Yeah.
So then, that's all this is. That's all this is.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly, I read the headlines. Trying to find this decision. I start reading headlines. It's like conservative majority court strike. It's like whatever it is. And then others are saying court permits thousands of disenfranchised voters to vote. And it's like, no, it says nothing of the sort. It's such political nonsense.
Right.
And the other thing that's crazy about this is the media, and even friends of mine say this stuff all the time. Well, we've got more Catholics on the court than we've ever had, and they're all blah, 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 blah. Well, Amy Coney Barrett voted with the, quote, liberal bloc on this.
She did, yeah.
And she would not have granted a stay on any of it. And she's done this in a couple things. So she's got a different ideology, not about what the underlying issues are, but rather when the U.S. Supreme Court should intervene and stay enforcement or prevent enforcement of law.
Yeah.
And those are issues that matter. The procedure matters.
Yeah.
Now, one of the considerations I should say, so there's like factors that you have to look at when you make these decisions. And one of them is the likelihood of success on the merits of the law. So that's an important one. So it does telegraph sometimes what a court's going to do.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it's just procedure.
One of the major faults in our system was illustrated after the 2020 election when Trump or the candidate for governor out there in Arizona wanted to challenge the outcome of the election based on various voting irregularities that they alleged. And at a certain point, when it gets to be 2021 and the president and the other governor of Arizona are already sworn in, and it's kind of like, it's already happened.
Too late. It's done.
It's too late.
Yeah.
And so what this illustrates to me is that something I would like to see if there was a constitutional amendment that we could add would be that cases involving federal related elections, I think, should be that should be material, though that should be subject matter that the Supreme Court is instructed right in our Constitution that they must take that on an expedited basis, because otherwise the people are not, voters are not going to have faith in the electoral system if all of this gets thrown out after the election and we never really have a forensic investigation. We never have anything that settles in people's minds. Was it a fair election, yes or no? And I think a case like this that gets ahead of the voting and sorts out what kind of identification a voter has to present in order to register or to vote in person, this is the kind of stuff we really need. We really need these kinds of clarity from the Supreme Court.
But there is already a mechanism for this kind of stuff, not specific to voting law, but specific to these issues. So like in law school and constitutional law, they teach you a couple things about jurisdiction of the U.S. Supreme Court. is that first and foremost, there has to be a case or controversy. There's no
Yeah.
advisory opinion. So you don't go to the court and say, please tell us what you'll rule if we decide to do this.
Right.
Doesn't work that way. There has to be a case or a controversy. The second thing that has to happen is there's got to be standing. In other words, you have to, like, the law has to somehow impact me if I'm going to sue somebody
Right.
and go up.
Right.
So back to the case or controversy is what you're talking about, because what happens is by the time it gets up to the Supreme Court, there's no longer a case or controversy because the matter's resolved.
Yeah.
And then we would call that moot. It no longer matters.
Yeah.
It's irrelevant. But there's an exception. So and for those constitutional law scholars, I'm spitballing here from like my first year of law school, but I think case or controversy requirement was discussed long ago in a case called Muskrat versus Mellon. And I always remember that because there's a rat in the court. It's got to be a case or controversy.
Yeah.
But there's an exception. And the exception was in Singleton versus Wolf, I think. And a perfect example of this is Roe versus Wade, because some cases are, quote, capable of repetition, yet evading review. So if you've got, say, abortion, and you want to go get an abortion and the law doesn't let you get an abortion, well, you're going to have your baby by the time the Supreme Court ever decides it. But the Supreme Court will take cases like that because that's always going to be the situation. It'll repeat, yet evade Supreme Court review. So they will take those decisions as an exception to the case or controversy rule. So I guess my answer to you is this. Eventually, we're going to get a decision on some of these voting issues.
Yeah.
And they won't apply retroactively because it's too late.
Yeah, they're not
But
going to tell.
Proactively, they will.
Yeah, they're not going to tell a governor that's been sworn in or a president that, hey, but you're now kicked out of office because we've decided the election didn't have integrity. That's just not, you know, we need to revote. I mean, that.
But they can decide it, and the decision can have impact going forward on how things are going to happen.
So I think this technical, as you said, procedural decision, it was timed by the Supreme Court to come out prior to the deadline for printing the ballots in Arizona.
For sure, yeah.
So they did a great job here. Even if I don't agree with half of the decision, I agree with the idea that the Supreme Court passed muster on at least the mechanics of what's going to happen.
Yeah, they gave some guidance, enough to let things go.
Yeah.
And, interestingly, you had Alito, Gorsuch would have granted a complete stay. They would have allowed the entire law to go into effect.
Yeah.
Sotomayor, Kagan, Amy Coney Barrett, and Jackson would have denied it. They would have kept the law out of they would have not let the law remain intact while it's getting decided.
Yeah.
And then you had sorry, I lost track where I was.
One of the majority justices switched and went with the liberal wing of the Supreme Court, including Barrett, on striking, if you will, not allowing the Arizona law on the other provisions for mail-in ballots to go forward.
So basically, you got Kavanaugh here as the swing vote.
A split decision.
Yeah, you got Kavanaugh as the swing vote.
Interestingly, the DNC is announcing this decision as a victory for them,
and the
RNC.
Right.
Yes,
so
they both
split the baby.
They split the baby. So the thing that I'm excited about is that maybe it's awakening in their minds at the Supreme Court that they got to get involved in this stuff ahead of time if they see as you say, a repeatable scenario where the outcome of the election can't really be challenged post facto, and they're throwing out these cases based on standing or other reasons. And citizens are going, well, what the hell? We followed your rule book, Supreme Court, and you're not hearing these issues. And the American people are getting more and more upset that they think, for example, in our state, Frank LaRose, Secretary of State, just sent to our Attorney General, Dave Yost, 600 names of non-citizens that were that illegally registered. It's a felony, right? Illegally registered to vote in Ohio. And so we'll see what Dave Yost does with those 600 people.
Yeah, look, I've defended a couple cases of voter fraud type cases over the years. Not anything recent, but it happens. People get prosecuted.
Yeah.
I mean, the question is, it's like, I've always said this, and not always, but I have this sort of, I don't know, tongue-in-cheek theory that the government's they're going to find as much fraud as they want to. It's like, because all you have to do is look.
Yeah.
You're
There's
going to,
plenty out there.
it's like if you staff up an administrative agency and give them the job to go find fraud,
Right.
well, they get to define what fraud is. They get to define what the rules are. They get to define how the rules get broken. And then they got boots on the ground that are getting paid to go find it. They're going to find it.
Yeah.
And I guess my point is some of that will be legit, some will be gray, and some of it will be illegit. But you're going to find voter fraud if you start looking for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of fraud and switching topics, if we're done, switching topics. So the Bureau of Labor Statistics came out with a revision, and this has been a constant Biden administration thing, where they say the jobs picture is much more rosy, and then a month or two later they revise the number, to a real number. And just this week, the Bureau of Labor Statistics came out and said, "Oops, actually 818,000 more people were unemployed during the last reporting period than we said." And of course, that statistic is partly what the Fed uses to decide, it has been using with these 0.25% increases in the federal borrowing rate. And the Fed has been talking now in view of this the rosy number, but now it's been revised downward by almost 1 million people, 818,000. The Fed had been talking about maybe as much as a 1% cut in the federal borrowing rate, and one wonders now, are they going to follow through on that? I think they're going to cut the rate somewhat, but maybe not the whole 1%.
Yeah, it's just lies, lies, damn lies. It just lies. It just lies. And I'm not suggesting it's even just the Democrats. Like this is the government, folks. It's like
incompetent.
We have created a power structure that the government needs to maintain its power, and they have a self-interest in doing it. These individuals. I mean, it's like these are lies. They just freaking lie.
Yeah, I mean, the incompetence was on full display a month ago, right? Where a building that was like 150 yards away from the speaker stand was not covered by the Secret Service. I mean, and I heard recently, finally some federal agents in the Secret Service were suspended this week.
I saw some meme on, it was YouTube or whatever, but it was like.
They can't do anything. Right.
Right. It's like somebody saying, well, the government sort of sucks, and it's the incompetence is astounding. And, I can't say that the government's behind the assassination attempt of Trump, but if you could sort of analyze what it would look like if the government were behind the assassination of Trump, it would look a lot like this, like a failed attempt, incompetence, and he's joking. He's not saying the government is, but he's saying it's just the incompetence of it is so astounding.
It's breathtaking, right? So, I'm just a bumbling regular citizen, right? And I think anybody, right, with any common sense would go out there, stand in that fairgrounds and look around at the buildings and say, yeah, we need a guy on that building.
Right.
Come on.
We should probably check that roof.
Yeah, jeez.
There might be a guy up there with a. In fact, didn't somebody tell us that there's a guy up there with a gun? Well, Norm, why don't you go check that out? Let's just get crazy and make sure.
They diddled around for an hour. But
I know it's a high roof, and you got to get the ladder out, and I know that it's hot. Please just go check that out. That way we can, if nothing else, let's just cover our own asses and say that we did.
Right.
Nope.
60 years ago, right, they had Lee Harvey Oswald climb the stairs of the book, Texas Book Depository, right? And he got to high ground and he shot the president. This is
right. Who would think that could happen?
I don't know. It's unreal. Hey, anyway. Well, you want to talk about the convention which ended last night? The convention, yeah. Or the estrogen convention or whatever that was.
The estrogen
signs all over the United Arena saying trust women. It was a female. It felt like some kind of a coven.
Trust women, but not Amy Coney Barrett. How about Tulsi Gabbard?
Right.
We're going to trust her?
Right. Not Nikki Haley, not Jean Kirkpatrick. Not, like
they didn't even their own women.
Condoleezza Rice.
They didn't trust even their own women to come in. I mean, it's like they don't trust any of them.
No.
It's all a power grab.
Just trust this particular woman, Kamala Harris. who is running away from her record. I mean, she came out with an economic
Oh my goodness.
speech a week ago, and at the convention, not a single word of it was breathed by her or anybody else.
She's
just running from her record.
Does she really think that she can just say, "Okay, I got a solution for the problem, guys. We're just not going to let the bread people charge you that much money or that much money for bread. We're just going to tell them they can't do it."
So Kroger's annual report to their shareholders said their profit margin is 1.2%. That, I mean, so for every dollar Kroger, invests in their inventory, they get a penny.
Well, so but this is an interesting conversation because Kroger can handle that. So this is where scales
matter, right?
Yeah, the scale of your business matters. So Kroger, Walmart, Costco, Aldi, these big boys,
right?
They can function on a smaller profit margin because the scale of their sales is so vast.
Yeah.
This, like in their own way, I mean, it's not even in their own way. These people are advocating to tamp out the small businesses because Bob the grocer on the corner can't do it. He can't survive on 0.1% or whatever it is, 1.2%.
No, you're being charged by the Wonder Bread Company, say $1.50 for a loaf of bread, and like in the Soviet Union, Kamala would order that loaf be sold for $1.25. Well, what's going to happen is the guy running the grocery store will say, "Hey, Wonder Bread, I can't afford to buy your bread." So then there is this artificial shortage, and Wonder starts selling back on the dock into the black market because they need to stay in
business. They go out of business and they don't make bread. So look, now you have, like you said, a shortage, which is like a shortage of supply.
Yeah.
And an increase in demand.
Yeah. Like
so
who's going to force you to stay in business at a loss? You're not going to do it.
The most important concept of economics and life, I think, that I have learned from reading and studying and just sort of living till you get to a certain age is this idea of scarcity. Scarcity, like everything in human existence has a scarcity rating of some sort.
Right.
Nothing you have as much of as you possibly want.
Right.
And if you do have as much as you possibly want, it becomes valueless. And if you have none of it, it becomes valueless because you can't get it. So it has no value.
Yeah.
Now, if you have just a little bit of something and it's in demand, the value of it increases exponentially because there's not enough to go around.
Right.
So put a scarcity hold on something like food, and let's just see how expensive it gets. And how does that happen in the first place? All these dumb policies that these idiots created to go. It's like, all right, so gas prices are up. Guess what? It costs more for farmers to go make food. You don't like cattle, so we're going to tax cattle. I don't know if this happened, but it's like it's going to be more expensive. So the more regulations you put on an industry, the more expensive it is for that industry to operate, and that gets passed along. And the product they create becomes scarce because it tamps people out of business.
And every now and then, the liberals will slip up and actually say the truth. Like when Obama was talking about getting rid of what he called dirty coal, which fires like 1/3 of the American power grid still. Mm-hmm. And he said,
and it's not dirty anymore, by the way.
No,
we got to get the exchequer on this to talk about
that's
this.
That's it. And the thing is, he said, well, electrical rates will necessarily skyrocket. And they go, oops, did I say?
Well, they're happy about that because they want us to go live in like solar high rises that they get to control all the energy. But now, of course, I don't think they're going to deprive themselves of energy.
Right. Rolling brownouts in California, and yet they want people to recharge their EVs. Right. I'm like, what?
With what power?
What?
With what power?
Do I get on a bicycle and put a generator on it?
Oh, Gilligan did it.
So, the other Kamala genius ideas were things like we're going to give $25,000 for first-time home buyers who are in a certain protected class.
No. We're going to solve the housing shortage that we created.
Yeah, the subprime crisis, right, of 20 years ago is completely forgotten. Right. Now the federal government's going to get back into disqualified people with bad credit or no credit, and helping them enter into a contract to buy a home that they can't pay for.
It's just so insane.
Here we go again.
It's so insane.
It's like they don't learn.
Well, not only that, Norm, they've let how many million people into the country, given them, like, here's your free phone.
Right.
You're going to get some welfare. Here's your health care. Now
4-star hotel rooms.
Go
in
live
New
somewhere.
York City.
So you've created a housing shortage.
Right.
And now you're going to solve the problem you created. And instead of that, you're actually going to perpetuate the problem you created because you're going to give people housing that they can't afford.
Yeah. And
at the cost to us.
And the city of New York, for example, can't afford 1/3 of their convention hotel rooms are now filled with illegals. And Hyatt, I think it was Hyatt or Holiday Inn, sued one of their franchisees because they're violating their franchise agreement in New York City that says you can't block out, you can't contract out your entire set of rooms if you're going to be part of our network. Because we can't.
Yeah, we put people there. Like we use those. Yeah.
We use those. Our reservation system now no longer can, because you're taking this enormous amount of money from the city of New York to house these people more or less permanently in your hotel. And
so this back to the communist fascist state. That's what this is.
That's right.
You've got the government taking over private industry.
So, Steve, and probably the most outrageous of Kamala's ideas, again, which she didn't talk about at the convention, was taxing you on unrealized capital gains. So let's say a farmer bought his land, okay, for, I don't know, he bought 50 acres for $200,000.
Or he didn't even buy it. He inherited it from Grandpa. When Grandpa died, he took Grandpa's basis. So it was worth $100,000 when Grandpa died,
and now it's worth $5 million.
Right.
And at 20% of the unrealized gain, that's what they're talking about, between 20 and 25%. If you're a multimillionaire, they're going to make those people pay 25% of the value, current value, as estimated by God knows who. This farmer would have to then sell. Say his property's appraised for $5 million. 20% of that is $1 million. But he doesn't have $1 million in the bank.
It's not like he sold it.
No, he didn't sell it.
So
it's unrealized.
So we got to talk about first what a capital gain is. A capital gain is when something you own, whether it's $1 or whether it's a house or whether it's land or whether it's a car, that goes up in value and you sell it. You pay what's called capital gains. Now, I have a problem with capital gains to begin with because it's already a tax dollar that I have put to work.
That's right.
But let's just assume that capital gains already exist, so let's just live in that world. So I own this building, and let's just say I bought it for $100 and I sell it for $10,000. When I sell it, I'm having what's called a taxable event to the tune of $9,999. And the capital gains rate is usually about 20% plus whatever you pay at the state level. So 24%.
Right.
Ordinary income rates are usually higher than that. So you're paying less than what you would pay on income tax. But capital gains I would pay. And I would pay that when I sold the building. Now, there are other options that you can use that people call a 1031 like-kind exchange. If I went and bought another building after I sold mine, then I could just sort of push off that gain into the new building until I sell that one. So what they're talking about doing is taxing me right now, even though I didn't sell the building.
It's unbelievable.
So I've got the building. It's worth $10,000. They want to tax me on $9,999, even though there has been no event that gave me the cash.
Right.
So think about that.
That's crazy.
Think what you're doing to people. Well, first of all, think and who's going to tell me what it's worth, like you said? Well, the government. That's like asking a barber if you need a haircut.
So here's a question, Vice President Harris. What if that building Steve just talked about falls down in an earthquake and he doesn't have insurance? Do you refund him?
No.
The $20,000?
So you have bad policy because you're not funding the police. My building is now located in a crime-ridden area, and instead of I bought it for $10,000, now it's only worth $1.
Right.
Do I get a deduction?
Yeah. Does he get his money back? You going to cut him a check for the $20,000?
I don't need my money back. I just want a deduction. So I don't want to pay. It's not only that I shouldn't have to pay tax. I should get money back. I should get a refund.
Right.
Or they should take it off my future income. In fact, that's what's going to happen. So, and then think of that incentive. So I'm going to go buy a bunch of distressed property for cheap, knowing it's going to go down anyway, and then start pushing my losses off onto my ordinary income.
Yeah, assuming this would even feature the ability to recoup losses, which I don't think that's their goal. Their goal is to tax you on what you own.
We only take it when it goes up in value. and that's that. So you're taxing people on stuff they already own. It's insane.
So let me speak to the women of America. So you have maybe over the lifetime, collected various jewelry items, maybe a Cartier watch or, maybe a Rolex or something, and diamonds and gold and whatever that your husband or that, you've bought yourself or whatever. Imagine what this actually will come to. We're going to talk about home inspections by the government.
That's right. Brown shirt inspections, I'll call it.
To find your artwork, to find your jewelry,
to find
your, oh my God. I mean, here we go.
We did a search of your credit card records, and we noticed that in 2 years ago you bought a diamond for $5,000. We'd like to come appraise that.
Oh, I lost it in a boating accident.
Would you provide proof, please?
Come on.
So it's just like there's no chance of corruption there.
No.
Right.
No, not at all. Here you go, Mr. IRS inspector. Is there some kind of gratuity that I can provide today for you?
Well, how many IRS agents are we going to need to go enforce this new policy, and how much is that going to cost? Because it's probably going to cost almost as much as what you're going to grab.
And they're going to be flipping mattresses. They're going to be tossing your house to find all this shit. I mean,
it's not a search. It's just an administrative inspection.
Oh, and here we found a gun with a bump stock. So let me call my buddy over at the ATF to come in here and raid you.
Look, this stuff, it sounds so good. You know what it sounds good to is like young college-age kids who don't have any money. It's like they get so indoctrinated with this crap. It's like, these rich people, if you just gave $1 million to me, I'd be so much better off. And not only would that's not true, right? Because by and large, people gifted money like that without any sort of experience or education or life lessons to handle it. Right. It's usually gone, or they become addicts, or it's like
lottery winners.
Like lottery winners. Yeah. Not only do they almost always lose their money, they almost always are less. Even if they didn't, they're not as happy as they were before, or they're equally sad.
Yeah, The thing that really the thing that struck me was some of the use of actually Nazi words at the convention. So they kept talking about strength through joy, right?
I know.
That's actually a Nazi program,
Stalin. There's a bunch of old
which is the classic. We're going to set up entertainment, for the masses to distract them from their misery, which ancient Rome did, right, with the Colosseums, which the Nazis would take.
You're happy.
You're happy. Here, go on a cruise in the Baltic Sea on a Nazi yacht, on a vacation, right?
It's so joyous.
For 7 days, and then go back to the Volkswagen factory and stamp out, more armored personnel carriers for the Wehrmacht. I mean, strength through joy, really? How about you just let us determine what gives us joy, right? And we'll make our own decisions. We don't need you, Kamala, to decide what brings joy to our lives. And Obama's facile talk about tolerating, we're the party of tolerance, and we're the
Yet
party.
They're not.
We're the party of openness and the party of transparency, and we believe in free speech. All this crap Obama is saying up on the dais. And in actual fact, right, they're sending people to Silicon Valley to choke off our ability to talk to each other, to have free speech.
They believe in free speech as long as you agree with them. That's the bottom line, because everything, if you disagree with them, not only is that, quote, disinformation, we have to be careful of disinformation, which implies that somebody is the arbiter of truth to figure out what is disinformation, first of all.
And they did try to institute a ministry of truth.
Biden had it on his agenda at one point.
Had it on the agenda. The hive mind mentality that was on display at the convention was shocking to me. With Hillary, I'll give Hillary credit in her speech. She didn't dance around, call it reproductive freedom or reproductive rights. She called what they were talking about abortion. She used the A word. She was the only person there over the 4 nights that actually talked about unfettered, no guardrails up to the day of birth abortion. And that's, in Ohio, that's what we have. The people voted for that, and that's a system we have. And I'm sure the legislature is trying to put some guardrails, but it's a constitutional amendment now in Ohio.
Yeah.
So I don't know what they're bitching about.
Well, they're making
post Roe. They won. They control abortion in Ohio. It's way more lax than Roe ever was.
I mean, look, this is sad that our state of affairs has come to this, because on the one side, they're these joyous, happy people, and you got this sort of Ed Asner looking coach who
really didn't coach and really wasn't a soldier.
Yeah, boy, that guy, man.
I mean, what a clown, right?
So you got this sort of likable old man, and you've got this joyous woman, and no policy, no description of what she wants. And whenever she opens her mouth about what she wants, it's like this horrible thought of like communist price fixing.
And she's given no interviews, and not even to liberals like Katie Couric or Rachel the Mad Cow. She hasn't even had an interview with friendly media. She has embargoed herself for almost 30 days, and she's running for president. Zero.
Yeah. But let me finish that thought, though, because on the other side, then you've got Trump, and we hate him because he's mean and he says foul things at times, and his tweet button was a little bit offensive. So we've got like the joyous people or the offensive person, and nobody's really looking at what their policies are, because if you look at what Trump is saying about abortion, for instance, it's like it's pretty darn moderate, if not a little bit liberal.
It is. It is.
And
he's always been like that.
I agree with him on the fact that it ought to go back to the states. And when we get down to the grassroots of what I honestly and personally think about abortion, whether I agree with him or not, I do agree with the policy that this is a state level decision where we can at least vote and the policies can change with the voters.
Yeah.
And then economically, look, Trump is far more spendy and meddlesome than I would want to function.
He's no conservative. I mean,
he is no conservative, right? But they've made him into this guy. They've just made their beast, and they're going to fight that beast. It's like this mythical thing now.
Well, they're hanging that 2025 heritage thing on him, and he has rejected it. I don't know how many, 100 times.
I would bet my salary Trump has not read a word of it.
Well, he said, in fact, when it was sent to him, I won't read it. Don't send me another copy. So you're correct. He hasn't read it. He wants nothing to do with it. It's a Heritage Foundation white paper that somehow the DNC is trying to attach to Trump, even though he has openly and forthrightly rejected it.
But it's working because nobody digs behind the scenes of any of this stuff. Like you asked, I saw these people on the street asked, "Who are you voting for?" And I'm for Harris. Why?
I don't know. Yeah,
and they're like, "That's a good question."
Well,
I'm sure some people
told me.
I'm sure some people answer because we're not seeing the whole sample, but I'll bet you the people that answer by and large says because I hate Trump.
So the emasculation of the country was physically on display at the DNC. They literally had a vasectomy truck parked outside the United Center for men to go into and whether they're low T or not. But go ahead and get your vasectomy. It's like, what is that? I mean, what is that, right? Why not have an abortion van right next to it and just tell the Praggers, that are in the stadium that, hey, listen, if you want to get rid of that viable tissue mass.
I can appreciate if a guy wants to get a vasectomy. I could care less if you want to sterilize yourself. It doesn't make any difference to me. And I think there's probably good reasons that people do it. I have friends that have done it. They've had their kids. They don't want to go back or whatever it would be.
Whatever. Right.
But to tout it as something political outside your convention, it's like, what is that? I don't even understand it. It's like we hate people so much that we want to limit our population going forward, but not for us.
For us
living people.
So Dana Bash was caught speculating that people like Kamala's husband and Tim Walz, the vice presidential candidate, that they were presenting an alternative male role model to America. And she said, and it would be somebody who doesn't walk around with guns and watch Hulk Hogan. And she rolled out all these stereotypes of what she thought manly men were like. And the most manly thing a manly man can do is tolerate a difference of opinion. And that's what I would say is the most manly thing. And that's Western culture, is to hash out things in a nonviolent way like we used to do on college campuses instead of them being re-education camps.
Yeah, and then instead of throwing tantrums at anybody who disagrees with you, worrying about triggering somebody
and
that
telling you to
disagrees with you.
shut up, you can't talk, shut up.
It just is, what about the guy who has a family and kids and goes to work and comes home every day and does everything he can to support the well-being of his family. Is that manly?
Yeah, that's manly.
Seems pretty manly to me. All right, so let's talk about, I know it's a couple weeks old, but, we've got a local here in Columbus.
Yeah.
Or it used to be a local here in Columbus, Kirk Herbstreit, but he's an Ohio boy. He was out in...
I think his kid plays local football here, right?
I think he's moved now.
Oh, okay.
But he was from, where was that? Not Dayton. Somewhere in the Dayton area.
Quarterback for Ohio State University.
Quarterback for Ohio State.
Current commentator on ESPN.
Worked his ranks up to become one of the game day guys on ESPN for college football.
Kirk Herbstreit.
Kirk Herbstreit. But he sort of comes out of the closet.
Yeah, right. Kind of like Michelle Tafoya and several other sports commentators are slowly kind of coming out against Jason Whitlock.
Against the DEI.
Yeah.
So what's give us the details?
Well, basically, it was on trans athletes competing, like, for example, in the boxing, in the women's boxing in the Olympics. And and Leah Thomas, a man with his package still there, swimming in NC2A meets and wanting to be on the U.S. Olympic team. And apparently at the Olympics, what they took for proof of your gender was what your passport says, okay? And this boxer, for example, that Herbstreit was commenting about, this boxer from, I think, Spain or somewhere, he actually, or Algeria, wherever he was from, but he was tested for chromosomes. He has XY chromosomes. He's a man, XY, right? So he's not a female, but yet his passport says he is a female. So the IOC allowed him to box women because his passport, he identifies as a woman.
So
even though biologically he's a man.
And old Kirk comes out
he says that's crazy.
Out of hiding and says, look, I know it's not popular. I know that people, but I just can't sit on this anymore. I just don't think that men should compete against women in athletics. I mean, he basically was pretty clear about it.
Girls are getting hurt.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, if you watch the male basketball and the female basketball, or the male water polo and the female water polo, it's a whole different level of aggression.
And it doesn't mean that women are worse, guys. I mean, this is what's so stupid. This is like you have to believe the lies, damn lies.
Right.
It's not that women are worse.
No.
It's just that they are different.
That's right.
The women's basketball is not the same as men's basketball.
Oh, for God's
Women's
sake.
tennis is not the same as men's tennis. And I am the first one to admit I would probably lose to any professional woman tennis player because I suck at tennis.
Yeah.
But put a professional women, like the McEnroe interview, put a professional women's tennis player against a professional man. It's not even a match.
Right.
It's not even close. And it's like that at the elite levels of almost any athletics.
Yeah.
So look, don't act like it's not.
Yeah.
And then, it's like the old Clint Eastwood, not Dirty Harry, Josie Wales. Don't piss down my neck and tell me it's raining. And that's what they're doing. It's total BS. So
right. I think Herbstreit probably feels.
Well, and he's got
bulletproof,
and he's got FU money.
Yeah, so if they fire him, they fire him.
He'll just go do it.
But this is what is going. And frankly, I'm a little frustrated. Other than Riley Gaines and the former Bruce Jenner, Caitlyn Jenner. Other than a few, he identifies as a woman, right?
Well,
other than a few real, celebrities like that, it's a little thin. The female side of the equation, which shocks me, where are the female celebrities?
What if they're saying female for president or whatever, but does that include a trans guy if he were running? I mean, would that be the same?
Right.
Would they celebrate that just as much, or would they have to celebrate that person because he's marginalized for being trans? It's like eventually, I've said this before, there's no bottom to this. You can divide infinitely, and it has no bottom. And eventually they get divided up. And you're starting to see like the Herbstreits coming out. I think Jack Daniels, you're starting to see companies eliminate their DEI programs. They're finding, I think Jack Daniels was the most recent one that comes out of the woodwork and says
Harley Davidson got exposed.
Yeah,
a lot of bikers going to Indians now. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of Harley people are very disappointed.
Look, these are American brands, and it's not that and they're going to say, well, that's the old racist. No, it's not.
It's not.
These are iconic.
They're
iconic. So these stand for freedom, right? So look, are there racist people who own Harleys? Almost certainly. Are there racist people who drink Jack Daniels? Almost certainly.
But it's not
that
racism.
Doesn't define the brand.
It's not racism to not be in favor of a male boxer beating the crap out of a female.
Well, that's not racism. That's a phobia.
That's what I'm saying.
Transphobia.
But they're calling it all hate.
Right. It's all hate.
It's
speech,
all
right.
hate. I don't hate the boxer. What I hate, if anything, is the rule set that allows a man to defeat a female boxer in the Olympics. She's trained her whole life to be a boxer. And in 30 seconds, he has her beat to the mat and she cries uncle. And if you call that a success for females, Kamala, are you standing up for females? No, you're not.
She is or she isn't, or she's doing both, and it just depends on what lane she's in right now. So, well, look, we're an hour and change in. Do we want to? You got one more?
So I want to talk a little bit about the canary in the coal mine, which I call the United Kingdom or England or Great Britain.
Oh yeah, we got to talk. So we're at risk.
We're at risk. So what they are enforcing over there is any kind of hate speech is now illegal. So, for example, the female lady praying silently to herself without any exterior, like her hands weren't folded in prayer. She didn't carry a sign. She was on the opposite side of the street, standing in a public sidewalk across from an abortion clinic, and she was silent. She wasn't saying anything. She wasn't accosting anybody. She wasn't convincing anybody. She wasn't talking. No sign, no nothing. The police went over to her because there was a court order that told her to stay away, right? So she was across the street. She wasn't on the same side. The police went over there and said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "I'm praying to myself." And he said, "Well, what are you praying about?" "I'm praying for the victims of abortions that are happening in that clinic. That's what I'm praying to myself about silently here." And they arrested her. And she just got a nice big fat judgment against the British police, and we'll see if it holds up, for them violating her right to be silent, right? Like being silent now, it literally was a thought crime, right? It couldn't be more Orwellian. And then just this week, a man in Great Britain, again, canary in the coal mine, this is where we're going in the United States. He had a T-shirt or some kind of article on him that said, and I'm paraphrasing, but I'm pretty close, 95% sure. It said, "Oh, it's okay to be white and reject white guilt." Okay, he had a couple of phrases on or about his person. He just got 2 years in prison for that because the judge said, "I can see that you did this because you're a racist, and therefore you got to go to prison."
Yeah, this is thought police again. And look, along those lines. The London Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Mark Rowley, he now says that the UK authorities will use full force of the law against people who commit online crimes, even if they are not in the country. They come in response to a Sky News report. That's the Aussies over there that have a conservative bent, asking about posts made by Elon, or not Sky News. They're not the conservative ones. But anyway, either way, here's the bottom line. If you're posting stuff they don't like,
right,
then
on social media,
they're on social media.
Yeah,
they're claiming they're going to try to extradite us. Now, if this doesn't hearken just a little bit to like Boston, and the British colonization and what was going on here that created things like the Sons of Liberty and the Gadsden flag and everything else, it's like, look, you tried this crap,
right?
And this is important for us to note. When, like you said, well, maybe it's the canary in the coal mine, sort of the litmus test for the United States. I sort of disagree with that because when people give me the argument like, well, they don't have guns in Britain, I said, yeah, we left on purpose.
Right.
And then when they followed us, we kicked them out on purpose. And the reason we did that is because Americans are different, right? We are different. We have a different ilk.
Well,
we like our freedom.
The Second Amendment is not about gun collecting or hunting.
We have a First Amendment. We have a Second Amendment.
And it's about protecting ourselves against tyranny.
Yes.
And that's what the Second Amendment is for. It's not about gun collecting. It's not about hunting. It has nothing to do with ARs and AKs. Yeah. It has to do with the people having the means to revolt against a tyrant.
And this is like, if they honestly, I think this is BS. I think this is puffing more than anything. I don't think they're ever going to try to extradite an American citizen like Elon Musk or anyone else for tweeting stuff that they don't like.
I wish they would try.
But you know what? It's like, it is an extension of where this goes because like this idea of the world being governing it like one world government, and it's like this is it's like the forefront of what we're dealing with right now. And if this starts to happen, I think there will be conflict on a scale that people can't imagine.
Well, this is like liberal Sharia law courts,
Yeah.
which, like you go up into Dearborn, Michigan, they actually have Sharia courts that religiously enforce Muslim regulations on the people and punish them within the religious, like you can't go out, you got to wear an ankle bracelet or whatever. Like they're doing, there's an alternative judicial system in America. And that's what this UK thing would be like. It would be like them controlling American expression and First Amendment rights from afar, from another country. China's been trying to do that. They tried to control the organization that oversees the internet. China wanted leadership in that.
Yep.
I mean,
no, like this is dangerous
this
stuff.
is bad stuff, man.
All right. Well, with that, we got to wrap it up. We are another hour and change into Common Sense Ohio. I'm sure you've had your fill, enough for the week, but never fear. We'll be back next week. You never have to wait very long because week in and week out, we are coming at you with commonsenseohioshow.com. See what I did there? I combined the website with the name.
Nice.
So check us out there. Check us out everywhere on Facebook, social media, wherever you get, wherever your pleasure to get your social media dose of common sense. We are there. I can almost assure you. So we are coming at you right from the middle, at least until now, each and every week.